Okay, let's try and make this thing that I saw in a tutorial. I have listed these tutorials on 3D modeling. It was this one right here, and I'm finding some other ones, but let me see if I'm able to do it and explain it in another way. So I'm here in SketchUp. First thing, of course, is to save as and use the date code 220106, component rings. Let's just give it some sort of a name and put your name on it. Alright, so we don't need her. We're going to orbit, so we're looking at this origin here. C for circle, and I'm going to pull out along this axis. Either the green or the red, but whenever you're pulling out a polygon, always pull along one of the axes. It just helps a lot. So I'm going to pull out, let's say 5 feet. And the trick here is that this is going to become a component. I'm double clicking to select the circle and the surface. And I'm going to right click and make this into a component. Call it what it is, always helps. And what is a component? Well, if I move this over and tap Control, I'm making a copy. And with components, anything that you do to one happens to all. And that's the secret to this. Let me Control Z undo here. That is a component, and I can tell over here in Entity Info, it says it's a circle, and I have one of them. I'm going to make 24 of them. So I'm going to press Q, and I'm going to go to my origin, which is the center of the circle, and now I'm going to make a handle. Doesn't really matter where it is. The longer the handle, the more control we have over it. So I'm spinning it, but when I tap Control, again, I'm making a copy. And we want that copy to rotate the exact same amount right here. When I click, I don't do anything else before I type 23x. I had my original, I want 23 more. And now, when I hit Control A, you can see that I have 24. Now, why 24? Because circles are not perfect circles in SketchUp. They do have these vertices. And so we're going to leverage that to make something interesting. Let me hit Control S to save. File save is, of course, much safer. Now we're going to change one of these circles by tilting it. So we don't want to do all of them, just one of them. So I'm going to go into the component group and press Q to rotate. Now it's blue right now by default. We need it to tilt upwards from one side. So I'm going to press the left arrow key, and you can see it locks it into the green protractor. So I'm going to go to one of these vertices and click, and didn't work. Let me select it again. Q to rotate, left arrow, and click on that vertices. Now I'm going to go across to the other side and make a handle, and it's already up in the air. So if I do that, I've got a very interesting shape. They're still two-dimensional planes. But again, what I do to one of them, I do to all. So I'm going to push-pull on this and make that have a little bit of thickness. I have a very interesting shape here. We can go one step further, especially for something we want to 3D print. I'm going to Control Z until we get back to our stack of components. I'm inside one of them, and I'm going to use the F offset tool to make a ring instead of a solid circle by deleting the innermost part. So now I have a ring. And let's do the same thing. So I've got it selected. Q to rotate, left arrow so it's green. Going to one of the vertices and going across and then pulling that up. So that gives us another very interesting shape, a little more open. And the trick here is to then do one last rotation from somewhere other than the direct center. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to hit Q to get my rotation. I'm going to go over here, somewhere over to the right, and make a handle. And then I'm going to twist it. You can go either way to get interesting results. Let me see if I just go to here. What happens? We won't really know until we do a push-pull on one of these surfaces and see what we get. Didn't do anything too dramatic. Try that again. Let's see. So I'm going to delete that part. Select this circle. I'm going to select both of those. Got the whole thing. Q to rotate, left arrow, and make a handle. Then I rotate. You can see it a little tricky of exactly where if you're trying to make something specific, but we're just trying to make something cool. Let me see where I might be able to do that. Let me select one of those and go down here and try and spin it again and go the other way. You never get exactly what you expect, but that's a pretty nifty shape. Now the problem with 3D printing this is twofold. One, this angle right here is very shallow, very close to 90 degrees. Up here it can probably print okay. The other thing is it would not be touching the base very well. It would only be on that very thin edge. So there are a couple ways to fix that. First off, I can take this and simply scale it up so it goes more in the vertical direction. Whoops. Let me make sure I get all of them. Control A, scale, and up. So now my angle is a lot better. And I still have this flat part here. So this is where the 3D printing can happen. We're going to use these. These are the solid tools. Let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make a big flat area. Like that. And I'm going to make it a group. So that we're going to use it to cut off the bottom. Now it does mean that this needs to not be a whole bunch of individual parts. So there's a couple ways to do that. I'm going to try just making a union, combining all of them into a single one. Give it a moment. This is a big calculation, but it will then be just a single group instead of a bunch of 24 individual strangenesses. So now this group and this group, we want to subtract this from this. We have to get it in the right spot. So let me move this down and over. I might need to make that a little bit bigger. Double click on a group to get to a face. And now I just made it so it covers that pretty well. Let me look down inside. This is going to be mostly trial and error. Let's see if that's cutting off enough. So I'm going to use the subtract this group from this group. Once again, give it a moment. And it really wasn't enough to be a good solid print. So I'm going to Control Z undo, double click, and pull this up a little more. Let's see what we get this time. So subtract this group from this one. That's almost enough to give us a base to print on. Not quite. Do one more. We do lose some of the geometry, but it's of no use to us if it doesn't print right. If it comes off the build plate, the whole thing is lost. So better to be safe than sorry. Shave off more. I guess that might work. It's not very clean. There's other ways of making your own circular base. I want to go, I don't know. Let me use my zoom extents to get back out of there. There's one more thing that we would want to do for this, whether we're just animating or printing. I'm going to right click on this and soften or smooth the edges. Notice what it did. It means we can't push-pull on those anymore. We already melded them together anyway. So we now have a much cleaner shape that when we export this for 3D printing is going to print a lot better too. this would be fun to try. It does take forever to print. Print head is reversing direction over and over again, so couldn't print this very large without it taking 2 days on our printer. There you go, something fun that you could print, and you could go in there and paint and everything else as well. I don't think that's still a component. If you're going to paint, you want to do that before you merge everything together, so you don't have to paint every single surface. Just paint the one component and everything gets painted at the same time.